convene this meeting, and I'm not sure, is this a separate meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to call to order the joint meeting of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District Board of Directors and our Citizens Advisory Committee, January 14th, 2021. Hello, everyone. I can see on my screen everybody except Mr. Hamilton, and I don't know why he's hiding.
I see his name, but his screen is black. But he said he was here. He announced a few minutes ago that he was here. So.
Okay. The mayor is very dark. So let's begin with an outline of what we're going to do today. And I don't have an agenda for this meeting. Did one go out to us?
Did you not get there? I mean, I sent a packet out.
Yikes. Oh.
Did you not get that? I mean, it's just one agenda item.
Yes, it's just one agenda item. And I don't have that packet open in front of me. I'm very sorry, but I can try and open it. But with the agenda item, we all know what it is. It is to discuss how we are going to go about updating our solid waste management plan. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mr. McGlasson to present information and how we are going to discuss this today.
Okay. I don't know that I have a whole lot of additional information to provide. I would ask if everybody has gotten access, hopefully everybody got a link to the Dropbox folder that has numerous documents related to the solid waste management plan and its update. Most of those documents did make it into the packet, but there are a couple of additional documents available in that Dropbox folder for information and reference if people choose to do that. So if you did not get that email link or are having trouble accessing that, please let me know. We want to make sure everybody does get access to view those documents, and I imagine as we move forward through this process, additional documents will be added to that folder. So please make sure that you have access to that. And other than that, I do have there's a very small short PowerPoint that's kind of available to help guide us through the meeting that basically takes that document. I apologize. That document didn't make it into the packet, but I think it was in the previous board packet. It was a kind of a synopsis of a summary synopsis of the statute that Ms. Piedmont Smith put together, just kind of summarizing the elements and necessary contents according to the statute of the plan. If Ms. Munson, if you'd like, I can go ahead and share my screen and put that up.
I would like it very much. I was just going to ask about doing that.
I can get it from monopolizing my computer. All right. Can everybody see it? For some reason, I can't.
I can see it.
I can see it.
Okay. It's not showing in my Zoom screen, but I can see it on the other monitor. So, and I was able to get this set up. You can see down the right-hand side on each slide, there'll be a notes column, and I think I've got it figured out that if we want to make notes of our discussion, I can put these into the slides and keep track of those so everybody can see them and then make them available after the meeting.
Okay, so one of the things that we might consider putting in notes is ideas for who is working on, who might be contributing information this part of the plan. Other ideas for what might go into notes? I think Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, we could also put down where we might get this information.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else?
And just to
Ms. Thomas?
clarify, how long, what's our time frame for this plan? What is the scope of this plan? Is this plan supposed to go out to 20 years?
No, 5
Oh.
years.
5 years.
5 year, but I've seen others do 20.
Well, the original, when districts were first formed, the state put a requirement on solid waste districts to establish a 20-year solid waste management plan. And then when those plans all started to expire in the 2010, 11, and 12 timeframe, and I honestly, I don't know if they put anything in the statute, but everybody started working with a 5-year time frame for their plan updates, and that's what most districts have done. Now, part of the requirements of the plan are to look at projections at 5, 10, and 20-year intervals. But your plan term is supposed to be 5 years, and then come back and address that at 5 years or more frequently if needed. In fact, I do know,
If needed, ours needs it.
if needed. I can tell you that, Bartholomew County Solid Waste District is apparently really on the ball, because they did their 5-year update in 2016 and just updated it yet again. And what's in that Dropbox folder, and I think in this packet, is their second 5-year plan update. And if anybody would be interested, I'm sure I can get a copy of that original update that they did. So you can kind of look at, what differences did they make in that second update that they did.
Tom,
So-
I have a question.
Please.
The Bartholomew County plan, has that already been approved by IDEM?
I didn't ask Heather that. It's been approved by her board. I know that when she sent it over to me.
I'll check VFC right now and just,
Yeah, I've not looked at the VFC or did not ask her if that had gone in front of IDEM. So,
okay.
Okay. Well, I hope that everybody has looked over our 1993 20-year plan.
all 498 pages.
So that's certainly much more than anybody would ever include in their current plans. I think the length of these is around 10 to 20 pages. Isn't that right? From the ones that you've put in our Dropbox folder.
I think 15 is Hendricks County came in at 15, and I think that was page-wise the largest
The max.
document that I've
Okay.
gotten a hold of. So,
So it must have been exhausting to do this 20-year plan in 1993.
Looking at what's on our screen right now, I would hope that, this will be just getting data, so not really analysis or making policy decisions. So hopefully the IU class for the capstone project could help us gather some of this information.
yes, and that's what I've talked with Professor Waldman about, and that the demographic study is definitely right up their alley. But he and I have discussed that second bullet point, the solid waste production and projections really dovetails nicely in what you can get. We can get some historical and current waste generation data out of items databases, and you just take that data and extrapolate it out with the population projections in the demographic study, and they should be able to do that as well.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so items, we may need to number our bullet points for easy reference at some point. But so the demographics and the solid waste production over 5, 10, 20 years, both are capstone class.
Actually, if I may add a comment to that, I already did a little bit of digging and not very much time. One of these documents already referenced a site that does the demographics forecasts, and it extends out for, I think, 50 years, and also does breakdowns in 6
Ooh.
different categories of age groups. So the demographics, and that's for all of Indiana, and you can sort by county. So we can already have that information is already all available. And I see chat's disabled, so I can't punch it in there, but it's stats.indiana.edu/popproj.
Mhm. So I would like TSD to enable the chat if they could.
Well, can you, Joe, can you repeat that again? I'm putting it in the notes there.
Yeah, you have it all right. And then the last section
Okay.
is pop, as in the first 3 letters of population, and then _proj, as in the
Is there
first 4 letters of
Is there a
projection.
backslash in there, or what is?
Yes, so it's /pop_proj.
Chat is ready to be used.
Very good, thank you. We don't need to.
And
I also pulled that up, Joe, and it looks like both the Bartholomew County and the Hendricks County plans reference that website as their source.
yeah, I
Great.
noticed that too. And in addition to that, if there were any reason to want additional information, the US Census Bureau also has breakdown by, I think, cities and counties as well for the whole US through 2060. I checked some of the numbers and they're really quite close, so I don't know that it'd be of any interest, but if you wanted another resource, there is one.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On any of these 3 bullets, are there questions or comments?
Well, are we gonna wait until after we get the actual census results, as bad as they might be, before we start to fill in the numbers for the demographic portion of this? Because of the 2020 census is why I'm asking.
Right.
I don't know when those are expected to be available.
Within the next couple of months is my understanding, because the state legislature is counting on having those to do redistricting.
Right.
I wonder
I-
how much things will be impacted by actual demographic data. We could probably start on the other 2 bullet points and then modify those as needed if the numbers are very much different than if we're working with numbers that are very much
Right.
different than what the census data comes out to be.
And also based on the few numbers that I did look into, there was very little difference from, I guess, previous year's projections compared to actual census data when that year arrived. The projections were close within like fractions of a percent.
Wow, they're good
Yeah.
at it then.
Yes.
So we don't need a census.
It's
Yes, we do.
just double check, I guess.
A real census.
Right.
So what about inventory of facilities? Is this
The-
something? Is
The
this
staff
something?
could probably come
Yeah,
up with that
that's-
pretty easily.
Yeah,
Good.
that's, the only real, that's easy enough to do until you get down to all the little small local private haulers but provided that they're following local code, they'll all be permitted with the health department, and it's easy enough to get that list.
Yeah.
So
Good.
Right.
So you want to add that to the notes, Mr. McGlasson? And the solid waste management activities. That's a broad category.
And I,
Is this something you think the staff will draft?
Yeah,
And then the board and CAC will review and
Yeah,
make sure we're not
that's,
missing anything?
that's where you get into, our recycling facilities,
Mhm.
what haulers are doing recycling collection, what reuse options are out there. So, 'cause, mulching and composting facilities would fall under facility inventory. The composting ones are going to be registered with item. That's an easy
Mhm.
enough list to get. So I think, staff can draft an initial list of activities for the CAC and board to review. And to me, the more eyes on that, the better. There are certainly probably a number of options and activities for people that we're not all aware of everything. So.
Okay.
If we go back to bullet number 2, the solid waste production description, some of that would have been collected through the Kessler reports.
Yes.
Yes.
and I did want to mention with respect to that as well, the Kessler reports contain the 2016 Monroe County tonnages for the weight, or I guess the waste production. And then there's also the mixed waste composition breakdown. The tonnages are on page 21. And then it's the page 5 of the report, page 21 of the PDF document. And then similarly for the mixed waste composition, it's on page 48 of the PDF document.
So do we think that 2016 data is too old, or I don't know how we could get new
More
data
up-to-date.
without spending a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, we could get some raw waste tonnages, probably more current out of item, but you're not going to get that breakdown that you have in
Right.
the Kessler report, and I don't know how we get that. And maybe it's, but I think it's, instead of using just the raw tonnage numbers, you have the ratios, the percentages, and we can just apply
Mhm.
those
To our current, weight.
Unfortunately, some of this is going to be estimation.
Mhm.
They're asking us to project things out at a 5 and 10-year and 20-year interval, and that's all estimation. So that's just, a part of the process is to make these estimates, and we do the best we can with the data we can get a hold of.
And we also have we have data from just our facilities,
Yes.
Mhm.
and that should augment that. So in other words, we can see what our facilities have taken in terms of solid waste and also recycling.
So Kessler report, district report, item files.
I can't type.
In the meantime, I'll add potentially a suggestion. Don't want to speak on behalf of the entire CAC since we haven't met yet to discuss anything, but in terms of doing another, it's been 5 years since the Kessler report. So if we were to do another waste breakdown study, I personally would be willing to volunteer some time for doing that if we were to be given access and equipment for conducting that in this year for a more up-to-date, for I guess a 5-year plan that's not already based on data that's 5 years old. And then we can maybe discuss that at the CAC meeting this coming week to see if there's enough collective interest to undertake that. But,
and to talk about the feasibility of doing this with not just your time, Joseph, but how we have to arrange for it.
right, okay.
Mhm.
Can someone tell me when the deadline for this new plan is?
There is no firm set deadline. I mean, the 20-year plans expired, 2010, 11, 12, 13, depending on when the original plan across the state, for districts across the state, ours would have expired in 2012, or that 20-year, not necessarily expired, that 20-year period would have elapsed in 2012. The state has asked districts to update their plans, but they've never, they never set a firm deadline that your 5-year update is due by such and such a date. Like I said, Bartholomew County has now done theirs twice. I know there are other districts like us that have not done the first one yet. And to my knowledge, no district has faced any consequences, repressions for not getting it done or getting it done too soon or anything like that. But
Getting it done too soon.
but it is something that yes, the state wants it done, and just for us, just ourselves, yes, it's something that that we need to get done and get in place so that so that we have a plan to move Monroe County forward and try to do a better job of managing waste and reducing what's going to disposal. But from my perspective, at the same time, I'd rather take some time and get the right plan in place rather than push something through in a month that doesn't do anybody any good 6 months down the road.
Well, realistically, we have a capstone class that will have finished up all their work by the 1st of May. So
Yeah.
that's one time element. We have another time element that's the districts, and that's when the staff begins work on the 2022 budget. Hard to even say 2022 when we're just now getting into 21, but and that's usually June, is that right, Tom?
Well, hard and heavy, yes. I mean, it's usually before the end of May.
Ooh.
That Connie first starts prodding department heads about thinking about next year's budget. But it's June before people really start, devoting a significant amount of time to preparing the following year's budget.
So would you say June 1 would be a good target date?
Or just the June board meeting, to have a draft ready for the June board meeting for the board to hopefully approve and adopt, yes.
Good. Okay. Well, is there anything more on this slide that we should talk about? We can come back to it, of course.
No, we can't go backwards, only forward.
And no,
We have
that's
to
not
keep
true.
moving forward.
I know PowerPoint. Yes, you can. Okay, let's go forward then. 4 and 5.
So again, and these are the last two required parts of the plan for the statute. So an assessment of solid waste problems, present and future, and that's really something I think for staff, the board, and the CAC to
All of it.
identify.
Mhm.
And some of that is dependent, on where we perceive we are and what's an issue and what direction we want to go and what things we want to focus on. I guess if we're looking at trying to move that forward, my recommendation, I guess it'd be nice to maybe put a small committee together that representatives of staff, the board, and the CAC to kind of brainstorm what these problems would be to bring back to the bigger group to whittle down and finalize.
Tom, what do you understand under solid waste problems? I mean, what does that really mean, do you think?
Well, one of the things that for me is a problem here is waste tires. There's not you know, a quickie, there's not readily accessible facility that takes waste time. If you don't go buy tires from somebody, you're on your own to find what to do with your old tires. And we get calls all the time, people asking if we take tires, and we don't. Where do you take them?
Mhm.
And there's nobody local to do that. You know, and it's you know, probably going to be incumbent on the district to try to find a way for us to take those at some point in the future.
Mm.
So things that are hard to get rid of because there's not an easy disposal option. That's a solid waste problem.
Things
Plastic.
have changed too with the, you know, plastic bags and, you know, that
Mhm.
there are those kinds of changes as well. Some positive changes and some negative ones.
Right. Yeah. And
In the
on
market.
the recycling side, things that are hard to recycle because there's not a local option to do it. Those are problems. You know, roadside litter, illegal dumping. Those are things that could be considered a problem. So
On the topic of waste tires, Tom, has the district looked into Pyrolex in Vigo County?
no, I'm not familiar with that name.
They're the first waste tire processing facility in the state that it's like electrosis. They pressure cook them and electrocute them and
Oh,
break them down into base
Wow.
components. Very, very high tech. But they have they bought J&R Used Tire, which was a tire trucking company in Vermilion County, Indiana. So they have all this trucking infrastructure to bring in a large amount of tires throughout the Midwest. Their facility is still, they were doing shakedowns when the COVID pandemic hit. So they're still trying to figure everything out feasibility wise, but
What's the name?
it's Pyrolex, Pyrolyx. And it's a very interesting facility.
Wow.
Terre Haute, you said?
Yeah, it's in Terre Haute. And they have a
How much-
processing facility in Vermilion County.
Tom, would you add that to the notes? Just so we don't lose it?
I wrote it down on my notes.
Yeah.
Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's correct.
Good.
So solid waste problems would that include more ephemeral things like, you know, companies packaging things with too much packaging, or people, you know, using disposable things instead of long-term things, kind of behavioral issues, or not?
Well, I would agree with that, but for our purposes, I think we need to stick to things that we could have some impact on by, you know, what we decide to do with this plan and goals and objectives. We are going to change the way Amazon packages and ships their items. So,
But maybe we could do some education as far as
For the
other,
consumers.
yeah, consumer education.
well, and that, yeah, and we'll get to, I mean, education and outreach is one of the required, you know, or necessary components, contents of the plan, and that's certainly something we need to get into and figure out where we want to go with that.
And similar to that remark, I was thinking about the fact that Indiana's individual waste rate per pound per day is 7.2 pounds, and the national average is 4.9.
That's
So
terrible.
it is, yeah, both an inconceivable number, and it's higher than an inconceivable average. So
There's
That's a
an
problem.
education point right there.
yeah, and then a second.
That's
oh, go
per
ahead.
person?
Yes, per person per day. Wow. State average 7.2 pounds, and that's increased up. It's up from 5.7 pounds in 2015.
God.
So in just in over a 3-year period, it's been up over 30% about.
Wow.
Is that landfilled or, I mean, does that include recycled or?
I think it includes all waste types.
Okay,
It's
just
just waste
generated?
generated, but the recovery rate in Indiana as a state is only this year 19%. Last year was 20%. So that's 80% of that is
Yeah.
landfilled. So we can say about, what, a little over 6 pounds a day per person landfilled. in the whole state.
Boy,
Damn.
Joseph, I just can't help but think about a guest column for the HT that you might author on this point.
I
Or
might.
maybe do it jointly with the CAC, which certainly would bring the CAC more to the forefront of the public.
Hmm. That's a good
That's
suggestion.
pretty shocking.
Yeah, that's what drives me to join this committee and make a new management plan and start addressing these things that are very serious problems.
Mhm.
As far as other solid waste problems go, I know Brown County struggles with illegal dumping. I'm not sure of the status of that in Monroe County, though. Do you have any comment on that, Tom?
Well, I mean, it's certainly an issue, you know, how big of an issue of it is probably depends on your tolerance for such things. Yeah, I off the top of my head, but I can get with Lee and Mary Beth, you know, next week. And I mean, they have, you know, they're the ones that do the roadside cleanups or remediation of illegal dump sites and run the Adopt a Road program. And they'll have, you know, that we can get some tonnages together of, you know, exactly how much waste and litter we are collecting along the sides of roads and from illegal dumps in Monroe County.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So was it Tom who suggested maybe a smaller committee could look at
Mhm.
solid waste problems and come up with a narrative?
I just think that committee should have a representative of the CAC, the board and staff on it, or multiple, but just as long as all three different groups are part of that committee.
So if you would type that into your notes, that would be good. I wish I was doing the typing for you, but for the fifth bullet point, projected need for other facilities, future facilities. That all depends, I think, on our goals and aspirations for what we think we can accomplish and what we really hope would be possible to accomplish. So that's.
And I think in addition to that, you also have to look at, see, now you're going to make me go backwards, Cheryl.
I know.
You have
it's all circular.
Look at this second bullet point here on the waste production and those projections, and as well as recycling and
Right.
you know, composting and organics, but and then capacities of the existing facilities and activities
Absolutely.
that we have.
So this is a Venn diagram of bullet points that are not entirely linear.
Yeah.
But we might want to outline it in that manner, if you think about it.
Well, I assume we'll have some data about projections of solid waste and recyclable materials in the future. And then from that, we can, you know, maybe make some vague conclusions as to the need for facilities.
Yeah.
We have Rumpke, probably that facility will be coming on board within a year or so.
One thing that stands out to my mind as well is a need for, well, I guess, or actually what was already determined by the Kessler report is the existing presence of a large capacity for organic waste processing within the region, or within the district, I should say.
Well, their study did also conclude that the two existing facilities, ours included, would meet the projected capacity.
Right.
So more the collection.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Ryan.
Yeah, and I mean the bullet point, and I don't, and I mean, I think Isabel put this summary together, and I don't remember. I don't have the statute right. Well, it's in the packet, but you know, even if it's specific to facilities, you know, for me, part of that also is, you know, a facility doesn't do any good if you can't get the materials there. What's our capacity, our ability to haul it, to move it? So that's something I think that also needs to be considered when you look at those projections.
And that's also something that I was hoping to discuss with the district about the potential of providing said transportation, knowing that we already have the facilities in place for composting and that the municipal solid waste stream consists of 40% compostable materials. That is why I think targeting food waste and organics is such a natural and obvious way to start, where we could have a huge impact just through one stream. That'd actually be the biggest impact in one stream. And if the district could help provide a service for bridging the gaps between the existing structures and the existing production, I think that would be a really, really successful component of a 5-year plan.
So Tom, for your notes, would you please write just the word transportation so we make sure we consider that?
Especially of organic waste. I think that was the focus.
Well, and it's also the collection of it, right? Like having, if people were going to bring organic matter, I mean, other than what they're doing through Green Camino Fable Farms at the sites, but a place on site to collect it before it's transported.
So I think we should start using the same terms. Organic is the catch-all for food waste, yard waste, and other organics, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and you know what we're currently doing with Green Camino is not specific solely you know, food waste, and I don't know if Andrea or Ryan want to weigh in. I mean, they're doing more than just food waste, but you know, but that's not set up to take the grass clippings, you know, the tree limbs that somebody just cut down. You know, that
leaves.
You know, the composting facility, Fable Farms, may be in a position to accept some of that material, but our collection service at the facilities is not.
But also, I believe in the Kessler report, or well, the waste study, the organic waste wasn't really so much yard waste, since that is banned from the landfills, right? Wasn't it for the most part food waste?
It's not.
No,
It's
the Kessler report showed almost a 50-50 split on the organic waste between food waste and other organics.
Right.
So how is it getting in? Okay.
Well, I mean, the haulers and the facilities don't open every bag that comes across the scale, but that's what Kessler did.
Yeah.
I guess I also do want to remind everyone that we do have drop-off, organic drop-off locations at every recycling center. So that does exist. I also think that it is worth remembering that the residential organic material that comes from residential collection is really a very small percentage of the organic material that comes from the county. And so I think it is worth pondering, like, to what extent is it feasible, or is it worth putting trucks into collecting residential when that's not the bulk of where the material is coming from?
And that's also doesn't really comport with the guidance that Kessler offered in its conclusions.
Yeah, it accounts for like 2% of the waste. So it's, I mean, where are we more efficient in making a dent in actually reducing this material?
So more focusing on businesses and.
Yeah, and that's where it gets like, it's quite more complex of a problem, because a lot of the food that Kessler was finding in the waste stream is packaged, right? And so who is going to unpackage this food? So it's really, it's not a trivial problem to just like think of food waste as something that just gets separated. We can't even get it right with recycling. So I think that we really, I mean, it is a problem that needs to be put, like, it just needs a lot more thought than just saying, oh, we need to transport it.
Yeah, because transportation logistics are going to vary by site. I think it might be helpful for folks to look again at the KCI organic specific studies and some of their recommendations, because even they were off on a number of things. For example, suggesting that like 4 cubic yard rolling carts would be potentially a more efficient way of transporting. Cook Medical, one of our the largest business in town next to IU, we work with Cook Group and we service their buildings, and it took extensive training and customization just to be able to get the right receptacles into their commercial kitchens and their staff using them in order to get it into a receptacle that fits their business. For example, for us, they could never use a dumpster of any kind because all of that needs to be gone every day, and the container itself needs to not just be washed out; it needs to be sterilized every single day. Any receptacle that goes into that building has to be sterilized. I mean, they have people that check like bug counts. Like it's someone's job to check bug counts and traps around every entrance and all sorts of different places. So to get receptacles that are suitable for things like Cook and Baxter and Catalent and IU Health Hospital, all groups that we are either currently working with or that we are expanding into, they need a level of customization that the transportation as a black box just kind of term doesn't account for. Because when you get into specialized types of rollers or specialized types of bins, just a regular tipping truck isn't really the best option. Cook wouldn't go for that, and we need to be diverting as much of their waste as we can. Another example would even be like Blooming Foods. They don't have space to have an additional big 4 cubic yard dumpster back there. So what we do is every Thursday, I bring them 4 65-gallon rolling carts. So we process about half a ton of food waste for them a week. They would never go for a transportation system that needed some kind of rear loader. So when we're looking at transportation, we also think about the process logistics of the corporations that we're trying to work with. Like even Chick-fil-A, their dumpster corral, we work with Chick-fil-A now, their dumpster corral, it can't even fit another dumpster. So they were only able to use 32-gallon rollers, not even 64s, that have to be kind of wheeled in certain places, and that's what works for their staff in their kitchen. So when you get into like the operational logistics of some of these things, a lot of the more the theoretics start to break down in very interesting ways. But that's why we're more than happy to be part of this conversation, since I think we tripled our business in 2019 and doubled again in 2020. So we've been getting into a lot of diverse spaces, whether that's schools or Cook, grocery stores, etc. So I think there's a lot to be said and done, and we're happy to help with that.
Wow.
It seems like we are moving on to solid waste management policy must include source reduction, including diversion of waste to recycling and composting. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Composting and the customization that's required to meet the needs of large entities that produce a lot of organic waste. So I don't know, Tom, if you could make a note here. Oops, not on that page.
Can I move? Yeah, Cheryl's got me all confused going forward and backwards.
Yeah,
It's my fault.
Okay, I'm sorry. What do you want?
About to go with that first bullet point, that to increase composting, we need to consider customization of of disposal systems.
I do want to note that I think it's the state of Vermont, has mandatory organic recycling. And I think it took them some period of time for everyone to implement whatever system they were going to use. But with enough time and with the mandate to do so, people figured it out. And I think that's probably all it needs is dedication and creativity to figure out how to do it because it's possible.
And the mandate to give the companies the incentive.
True. I know that Kroger headquarters is part of ReFed, the organization working to decrease food waste. But I also know firsthand that Kroger in town and elsewhere, they don't have that kind of policy. So while they're working on it through headquarters, they're not actually doing anything. So maybe there are ways of connecting the dots between, what their upper levels are saying, and then getting individual stores to also buy into that.
Also, Ryan and Andrea, do you have any specific suggestions if you were to make one recommendation based on the conversation that we just had about the difficulties and complexities from your experience? Is there one thing the district could do if we were to focus on it that would be the most impactful?
I think education is a big one, right? Because, even I don't think we should be talking about increasing composting, but reducing the amount of food waste. When Morning and I had talked a while ago at the grant that she was trying to prepare, one of the things that I brought up is that a lot of the food waste that we compost, sadly, is food that should not be even composting. And if you look at the EPA pyramid of how the food waste should be handled, composting is the last solution. And so I think that a lot of education does need to go into like the part of reducing the food waste before talking about increasing composting. That is on one side. And then on the other side is, I think it is the education of educating people about valuing the composting, right? Because the drop-off sites are there, but they're still underutilized, and it's hard. Tom and I have kind of talked about this, like, why are they underutilized? It costs $10 a month for people to have unlimited access to a drop-off site. Unlimited access, they can come as often as they want, they can dump as much as they want. $10 a month, so it breaks down to $2.50 a week. Well, how much do the orange bags cost? They cost like, I think, $1.25 or something like that. So it's not that much of a difference of a price, but yet people don't see the value of it. And so I think that's where the education needs to really go.
And also in terms of pricing and value, what I think we also need to be sensitive to in consideration is like, we lost commercial clients that may not come back. I mean, people are losing their livelihoods and their businesses, and restaurants operate on razor thin margins, as do grocery stores, which we learned from Blooming Foods almost going under just a few years ago. So asking these people then to invest not only in the process logistics of training and retraining their workers, and investing in the right receptacles, can they handle these margins right now anyway? And of course, that makes it more easy to make the argument to them like, okay, let's do back of house stuff, where there's less contamination and you don't need to invest a lot of money into compostables, which is an entirely different problem of these compostable polymers and plastics that end up having forever chemicals like PFAS and other things. The research is still coming out all the time. But it's very expensive for a restaurant or a coffee shop or a commercial kitchen. We work with all three types to get the compostable products, especially to front of house operations, and then also to do the training and then actually have the service conducted too. So there are cost components to this that, wow, I wish above so many things that Indiana had a universal compulsory recycling law. And I'm glad that places like Vermont and Washington and Oregon and California and other places very far from here have those incentives in place. But even, for example, New York State has compulsory food waste recycling. I think that was instituted within the last few years. New York City has an exemption for their businesses, oddly enough. But even with the New York program that they have available to residences and businesses, they have like a less than a 30% utilization rate. So they have a service and quasi mandate, and they still can't get that to happen. So I mean, thinking through the econometrics of this, thinking through the political economy of the incentives of all the actors involved, and what we can do in reasonable amounts of time to change culture and change incentives is just a guiding kind of heuristic for using in deciding on these processes.
So, Tom, under what you just wrote, I would say education and incentives as two methods of encouraging.
And also, as we think about just like the amount of food waste, I often think about how stores are just ordering too much, and if they have enough to throw that much away. And then I wonder, like, would it be feasible to get some kind of business person to talk to the the ordering people, or if there isn't a surplus of food, there won't be a surplus of waste. Also, like if things get returned, they automatically get thrown away, things like that. So I think also of like the business standpoint for restaurants and grocery stores.
So luckily we have food recovery from grocery stores and from restaurants with Hoosier Hills Food Bank program that picks up and packages food that is not sold, and it makes it available to their clients.
They do have that. There's also, I don't have any number, but I don't think the food bank has the capacity to take all of the food that does get thrown away from grocery stores, things that could be donated to the food bank. But even if all of it were to get donated, I don't think the food bank could store all of what would be coming to them.
Right. There certainly could be a much bigger collection and processing arrangement.
If I may take a small step back to the last note on the slideshow about how to encourage utilization of alternatives, and then that also pertains to alternatives to dependence on final disposal facilities. I did read in the Indiana statutes, code 1321.13 defines, or 1321.3-12 defines powers of the district. And among that, it references section 1321.13, which is district final disposal fees. So the statute indicates that a board may impose fees on the disposal of solid waste in final disposal facilities located within the district. Now, it also stipulates that it may not exceed $2.50 per ton, but it did indicate that under the management of those fees, anything can be used for two purposes, and one is for administering the fund, and the second is to pay costs associated with the development and implementation of the district plan.
Right.
So that is specific to final disposal facilities, and there are none in Monroe County.
Oh, there aren't. Oh, that's right.
There are none.
Okay. That is
There are none
unfortunate.
anymore.
Okay. Okay, because what I was thinking of was a way the district could potentially generate revenue on final disposal in order to support, I guess, first discourage final disposal, and second, support alternatives with the revenue generated by final disposal to help the economic incentives to shift from one towards the other.
Can someone tell me what final disposal is, please?
Landfilling or incineration versus like the Hoosier Disposal Transfer Station, waste just passes through there. That's not a final disposal facility. It's what's called a transfer station. And it's, we go take our waste there, and then it's transported to a final disposal facility. Where it's landfilled or incinerated.
Where does most of the waste go from Monroe County?
Sycamore Ridge Landfill outside Terre Haute.
Thank you.
What about food recovery? I know that there are organizations popping up that connect volunteers who can go pick up food from whoever has the excess and take it to whichever organization can use it. So is there something we can do there with I don't know, I think Hamilton County has something that they do. We could use them as a possible example. I remember that from the
Mhm.
IRC conference.
Right. So that's what I was talking about, Rondi, with
Sorry.
what Hoosier Hills does.
Mhm.
But there certainly could be other developments that would do the same because there's plenty of it out there
Mhm.
to be recovered.
Yeah, I mean, an organization I'm familiar with is the Society of St. Andrew. And I think what they predominantly do is that once a farmer has harvested his crop and sent it off to market, they'll go in and whatever got left in the field, the market rejected, because it wasn't pretty or whatever, they'll take that food and move it on to, some place like Hoosier Hills Food Bank or other organizations that make food available to those in need.
One program I did when I was at IDEM was the land application program. So biosolids from wastewater treatment plants, industrial waste products from factories, and domestic wastewaters. That's something that we could look, it's more of an obscure program. I don't think as many corporations know about it than they should. Maybe just looking at local businesses, maybe food manufacturing's an easier one, like Scholars Inn Bakehouse facility, wineries, breweries, and informing them about this program and educating them, like, you guys could be land applying this material, which is going to encourage local agriculture.
There's also the Farm to Family Fund that supports local farmers and the extra food they might have and distributes that to people in need.
Yeah, they come to the market every week and take any leftover product that vendors haven't been able to sell. And I think they mostly actually take it to Shalom or Mother Hubbard's Cupboard or some places like that.
Mhm.
But I should imagine that could be expanded pretty easily.
But maybe we're getting a little bit in the weeds here in regard to our solid waste management plan. We might be here all night.
Especially if we're talking about feeding people. So.
Yeah. And I think right now in particular, but I think even as we get, get more involved in drafting an actual plan, we need to be conscious of how general we want to stay or how detailed and specific we want to get, because we don't want to tie ourselves into, goals and objectives that aren't feasible to achieve. We don't want to tie ourselves into something that would, if circumstances changes, we wouldn't be able to change directions unless we went into the board and redid the plan again. We certainly don't want to do anything that precludes us from doing things, but we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves or set ourselves up for failure. So.
On that note, Tom, I do just want to add a little bit of feedback to the other county plans that I went through. And the one that stood out to me was Hendricks, which both paid attention to formatting and gave specific details in their strategies. Mm-hmm. And almost all the other counties had things like, we hope to reduce this, or we will consider doing that, and had no specifics and didn't really have a meaningful objective either. So I think to that point, I would like to achieve a balance between those two where there are particularly measurable goals instead of just.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we lack direction or anything.
Right.
And just to be clear, Hendricks County's director is a Purdue grad, so you have to take that into account.
It showed.
So I read all the plans, and Hendricks did stand out to me. So if you only have time to read one, please look at Hendricks.
Does it really have numbers attached to their goals? I
don't
must
recall.
have missed that. I thought it was only the Randolph County that actually had numbers. But maybe I'm getting them mixed up.
No, I think you're right. Randolph did have one number, but they didn't, Hendricks didn't have as like numerically aligned or specified goals. They just had details to what the objectives were and how they would achieve them. So I would hope to improve on that by having metrics associated with the Monroe County goals, but they at least made the effort to define their goals and how to achieve them in clear terms and not just vagaries like increasing this and decreasing that.
Okay. So,
Well, and I think it's one thing to set a goal to, you know, to say we're going to do a 25% reduction in the material going to final disposal over this 5-year plan, you know, and that's different than coming in and saying we're going to set a goal of, you know, taking 50% of the identified food waste and getting it to a composting facility. That's a little too specific for me. Particularly given that we don't have our own composting facility. I mean, we'd have to rely on and work with the private sector to achieve something like that. And so you know, I guess, and again, we're getting a little more specific than we need to for this conversation. But I guess that's kind of where I am when it comes to. I agree. You know, metrics are good, and we want to have something to measure what we're doing, but like I said, I don't want to set ourselves up for failure, or get too specific or detailed in some of that stuff.
so I think that was a good example, Tom, to say that there are things that we can work with in terms of our own facilities and our own programs, but when we rely on the private sector, it's much more challenging to reference specifics or metrics. So, is there anything you want to type up here?
Well, I don't know that we've really touched on the third bullet point here. And I would just say, that we do currently have specific education and outreach that is, geared specifically to composting and mulching and reducing food waste. So that does currently exist, and that's not to say that we can't do more or can't do better. But we do currently have that, and that is also a bullet point that Professor Waldman had indicated that he thought his capstone class would be interested in helping to develop some additional programs and outreach related to that.
Okay.
So,
Should we go to the next slide?
That's what I was just about to say too.
So, to me, this is where we get into the meat of the plan. I mean, our goals and objectives, how are we going to get there? What are the costs and logistics associated with doing it? So yeah, that to me, this is really where we get into the meat of the plan and where we, I guess, put in things where we're going to strive to make a difference.
Okay, so part of this, our goals and objectives, are continuing the services that we already offer in the district. Those will be in there, correct?
Unless somebody wants to get rid of something.
And so we will be noting the goals and objectives with respect to what we currently do and how we may want to change what we currently do.
I feel like this is where we are already heading with our talk about addressing food waste and how we wanted to go about it. But I'll just add that my 2 cents is I would hope to have the greatest emphasis on reduction of waste production, like Andrea had really underscored as well, particularly through education as the means of achieving it. And then also targeting the organic waste and I guess making sure that existing waste is directed to the proper stream, also through primarily, I guess, education.
Yeah, I wonder if we should call out the fact that we don't have a partnership, nor do we, as a district, collect yard waste. So I actually never really realized that. So the organic containers from Green Camino do not accept yard waste, although it makes sense to me. I mean, they would fill up, with one load. So I wonder if that could be a goal, like to create a partnership with some other entity to collect yard waste, or I don't know if we want to phrase it in a softer way, investigate possibilities. I don't know, some of this bureaucratic mumbo jumbo, but I think that's kind of a gap in our services.
It is.
I would, and not, this is not to speak into opposition of anything that has or somebody might throw out, but when we look at setting goals and objectives that deal with adding services and programs to the district, we do need to be conscious of what the private sector is doing and state statute that does prohibit us from going into direct competition with the private sector. So for instance, we could not that we ever would, we couldn't go and start to offer curbside collection out in the county because there's a multitude of private haulers that already do that, and they would cry foul, and a judge would laugh at us if it ever got that far. So
that's why I was thinking
do that.
That's why I was thinking of a partnership, if there's
right, yeah, and that's
people
not to
who
say
do
we can't,
accept
just
yard
similar to what we've done with Green Camino and the food waste. We can always, there's always ways to partner, and it's not that we can't do things to add programs and services or add to what we offer. We just need to be conscious of that prohibition of competition with the private sector.
Another thing I'd like to add is not just diversion of food and other organics, but also diversion of usable items. I know there are a number of waste management districts that have facilities. So it's similar to what we have here with materials for the arts. But I've seen places that have a larger scale operation where things that are put out on the curb that are usable get taken, instead of putting into a dump truck, they're taken to effectively a store where people can get those things. Especially since we have a university, and of course things are a little bit different now, but and of course Hoosier to Hoosier has played that role a little bit has played that role in the past of collecting usable items that would otherwise be discarded. But I'd like to see a diversion of usable items as well, both large things like furniture or smaller things as well.
Did the district partner at all with the Hoosier to Hoosier program? Was the district involved in that at all?
I don't think so.
Not specifically or directly. I mean, I think we've provided them some of the big plastic Gaylord tubs, some materials that they use for all of the stuff that they get, but we've never gone directly partnered with them to help them accumulate materials for that sale or anything like that.
Because Hoosier to Hoosier no longer exists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Fortunately.
Right. And it has to do, it started as a space problem, and then that triggered all sorts of other problems. Yeah, I guess space to store all these materials is one of the big components here.
Yeah, agreed. And also, I don't know how long the pandemic will happen and the economic repercussions of that, but people who are in need are often more in need now, and it just makes sense to have some kind of outlet for unwanted items,
Right.
both as a economic assistance thing for those in need, and as a diversion tactic. but yeah, space is a need.
So I do know that St. Vincent de Paul handles furniture, usable furniture, and finds an appropriate new home for usable items.
Well, and so does Restore.
Restore does.
I know that I like both of those places. I know that the capacity of at least the Restore is such that they end up not being able to keep everything that's donated.
Right.
So I think probably at every point in every organization, things end up in the landfill just because of capacity. So increasing the capacity, I think, is important.
Mhm.
And Tom, if I may ask a question about
Capacity.
means of achieving goals and objectives, since it's not possible to generate income on final disposal fees, does the district have any capacity for any sort of financial incentives to penalize final landfilling and to promote alternatives?
Specifically to that end, not in a punitive way. And I mean, I don't think there would be anything in the laws that would prohibit us from doing financial incentives to encourage people to do something and reward them for doing it. But we wouldn't be able to do and go levy fines or anything because somebody, put something that was usable in the recycle bin or something. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's pretty much precisely what I was hoping to determine, if there's a way to. Go ahead,
So-
P. Musby.
Is there, can we charge more for those orange bags?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we increased the cost last year, but I mean, that would be a way to disincentivize waste.
We can, we also have, I mean, everybody knows about the TV fee, and I know that there are some elected officials that are ready to see that go away. But we have in addition to the TVs, we have other
Computers
fees associated with some other, HHW materials, but those are more directly related to what our cost on the back end is.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do have the ability to increase those fees if the board chooses. But I think you also, when you start looking at that, and yeah, it's nice to think about finding ways to generate revenue to fund other things, but you don't want to do it at the expense of discouraging somebody from using that facility and bringing that material to us to get properly managed.
So
Right. Instead of dumping it.
right. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't want to put an extra burden on people who live rurally and might have less money at their disposal by increasing the cost of the bags. But I also don't have a good sense of how many people use them and how much that would generate. But I would want to be careful about who we're placing the cost on. And I wouldn't want to put it on people who are already disadvantaged.
Right. So I would like to comment that we don't have good data on use of private waste haulers versus use of orange bags. And I think that would be very informative for us, because it seems to me that we have a great abundance of people using private haulers rather than moving orange bags themselves. And it's surprising to me because for the rural areas, most people come to town at least some point during a week. And that's when it would be convenient to transport an orange bag. But
I would
they seem happy with their private haulers.
I would agree with you, Cheryl, that it'd be nice to get that data. I just don't know how we do it because the private
No.
companies aren't going to give us their subscription list.
No, they are not. One way you do it is one way you know this is to see, is to survey a particular road and to see when the cans are moved out
Mhm.
to the roadside.
Well, now, and I would say that, one of the things that I didn't mention earlier with the capstone class that we're talking with them about is, is doing a survey. That I think, the initial discussion on that survey geared more toward food and other organic wastes.
Mhm.
But, it wouldn't be hard to, add a question on there about, do you use the orange bags? Do you use a private hauler?
Mhm,
For those that live outside of the city.
mhm.
So Tom, sorry, I'm not sure who said this. Do you think if we were to ask the private haulers, we wouldn't be asking for names and addresses. We would just be asking for a number of subscribers, and they might be willing to give that kind of information.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
And I would venture to say that some would if everybody else was. But I do know that there's a couple of them that are not going to provide it.
Yeah.
But I would go back to Morning's comment about the cost of the orange bags and the impact that may have on rural residents or residents with limited incomes. That while I do agree with that, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think this was one of the things that we looked at when we increased the price last time was that we have data in the waste audit of the Kessler study that is specific to those orange bags, and there was still a substantial amount of material in those orange bags that we accept for free through other programs.
Yeah.
And so if we can increase the price of the bag, and if people would take full advantage of our other programs, it might not be an increase in their total waste disposal cost.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like an education issue, I guess.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's one thing I hope to be able to incorporate into the new website as well, which I'll table or talk with you offline with about Mr. McClassen, but I think that would be a very helpful avenue for education.
Mhm.
So in terms of both education and data collection, if we get to have a county fair again, I think there's a chance to collect some information on orange bags versus private haulers at the district's booth.
Mhm.
Additionally, the HT often used to have a booth, and they very often would do a survey. And this would just be, they'd also have it, I think, online. So those are just a couple ideas to throw out. Because there are people who have private haulers who don't even know about orange bags.
Probably so.
Yeah, is there any, I know in Bloomington, there's like a new neighbor club or something like that. I'm not getting the term right, but there's a newcomers club.
Yeah.
Is there something like that in the county that we could make sure we get our information into those kind of packets?
Oh, good idea. I hope we're getting these notes down.
There definitely is something, because when we moved out here, we got like a little package with a bunch of coupons and like congratulating us for moving in here. And I don't remember who did that, but there definitely is some county level thing that is aware of who moves in and out of houses at the rate.
Right.
Yeah.
It might be with the Board of Realtors.
Right.
Yeah, I can remember.
I think it is.
And we got like a coupon from Blooming Foods and stuff, and so it would be really easy to put in a little you know, a little
Yeah.
flyer in there saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is where the recycling centers are,
Wonderful.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah. One thing that, going back to the whole, the goals and the data collection, I guess, I mean, to keep in mind is that data collection is this year, I mean, right now it's just like, it's a tricky thing, right? Because it's not really representative. I mean, we see it in our weights. Some of the commercial customers that we kept throughout the entire year dropped their weights just by a third. And so when collecting data now, I think that we do need to keep in mind that it is abnormal season in terms of even like waste production. And so that needs to be like taken into consideration as projections are done. I mean, an example is Cook. We literally got like a third of what we were getting in January and February starting March. So same with the coffee shops. And then the other thing to consider is that the student population is changing. We already know that there's probably only a third of students are coming back this semester, if that. And so that already changes the whole dynamics of everything, right? And so
Of everything.
yeah, and so just I think it doesn't affect as much the recycling centers as it does like the city dynamics, because I mean the rural population is way more stable, but it is definitely a thing to keep in mind, and how revenues and just everything is going to change. And then the last thing is that the Kessler study does show in a table that I think it's only like 2%. What is it? Yeah, 2% of the waste goes through the district centers. So that's really small. I don't know if I'm reading this table correctly, but essentially what I see in this table is that 88% of the waste, this is the mixed waste stream, 88% goes through private haulers. So that doesn't even touch the district's facilities, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is that going back to the orange bags and trying to increase the cost. I mean, we're talking a handful of people who use them, really.
I would just, follow up on that with, and I have to go back and look at the report, but I think, and what you're referring to, Andrea, also takes into account the commercial waste stream, which is not our target.
Huge.
We don't service them.
Right.
And so, the percentage of the residential waste stream that we get, I think is, it's
different.
We don't get the majority of it, but it's substantially larger than that 2 or 3%.
Oh,
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get off of this call because of another meeting at 7 that I need to
Yes, you do.
first eat dinner. So thank you very much, and I'll, loop back around and see how I can help further.
So Isabel, thank you. And thank you for outlining the components of the plan. Okay.
If we were going to do a survey, I attended the Monroe County Environmental Commission meeting, and I know Lee's on that commission as well. They're looking at doing a survey for a different subject, but there could be an opportunity to team up resources for a countywide survey. Specifically, they're hoping to target rural areas, or yeah.
So that's really good to know. Thank you, Andrew.
That's the County Environmental Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got Lee right here to connect on that.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Lee.
Oh, that's fine. It's a good idea. I'll certainly bring it up to them. And well, actually, I'll email Nolan Hendren, the president of the commission, and because he's going to be working on the survey over this next month. And then hopefully I can get him to, actually it would help if some kind of more specific questions could be sent to me, so that, I think he might find it a little difficult to figure out just what to ask.
Right, we would come up with the questions.
Yeah.
No problem there.
if that could be done in the next week to 10 days or so before he's put the survey together.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I'm sorry, Andrew or Lee, I missed, was there a specific, I guess, a
Name.
topic or agenda for a purpose for this survey?
It's mostly, well, it's to help the Environmental Commission determine where the public would like them to work.
Okay.
And I think this is an area that would be of interest to a number of them. So,
Well, and that's similar to, one of the, like, I think I said in talking with Professor Waldman, we were looking at food waste and organics primarily, but one of the questions I talked to him about was, what people thought that the district could do, what could we do to improve? What is there a service that they'd be looking for that we could add? Something, things along those lines, which might dovetail nicely with that type of a survey.
yeah, that sounds great. And I know, well, it's been a couple years now. The Environmental Commission has gone through a whole lot of changes recently. We had talked to you, Tom, a while ago about the possibility of doing a presentation to the commission, and we might want to revisit that.
Sure.
Things a little more stable now, and I think that might be really helpful.
Sure, happy to do that.
I'll check into that also.
All right. Well, I guess I'm coming back to our slide, and I think that I kind of put out, to the CAC and the board at the last meetings, for people to kind of think in broad and general terms, what types of goals and objectives, and we got some on here, some that have come out in the discussion that I think are good and we should look at. And I would say that if anybody has anything else, they're welcome to email me. I can add it to this notes page, or like I said, we'll continue to add things to that Dropbox folder as well. And then as far as means of achieving goals and objectives, and looking at costs and finances, and to me, those are two items. We really have to identify the goals and objectives, and then we
look
and we can figure out means and costs. So
Tom, are we close to
one more slide?
One more slide, okay, because I have something important to add here.
See, Joe, there's your fees and rates and charges.
Just need a way to accrue those resources.
Yeah, and again, for that, and like I said, we do have, we have fees for some HHW things. Obviously, we have charges related to the Green Business Network, and the district does have a fee schedule ordinance resolution that is updated periodically when we change to orange bag prices or GBN fees or whatever. So that basis is there in that fee schedule, and whether as a part of the plan or the district can always look at adjusting fees or implementing new fees as long as we can justify doing it. So.
Yeah, the hitch is just making sure, like Maureen pointed out, that it's applied to the generators as much as possible and not just a broad public, or to address as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say that, and we don't know what's going to happen, with the proposed Rumpke facility, and if it does come to fruition and open up, what that means as far as our ability to do business with them, or what that might change on the financial side. But when the district started doing recycling and set all these facilities up, we were getting money for that material. And we could, we continued to get money up until about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. It kept decreasing, but we were getting some.
Right, but we were still,
Getting rebates.
it's not that it operated in the black or anything, but it was still generating some revenue. So I'm not suggesting that we start charging a gate rate for our recycling facilities or anything like that, but because we are still a tax-funded entity and taxpayers should get something out of those taxes that they're paying. But, things change over time, and, our ability to generate revenue off materials has decreased as a result of predominantly China not taking material anymore. That may reverse itself again. There's a lot of optimism about the Brightmark Plastics facility up in Ashley, and its desire to obtain plastics, lots of currently hard to recycle types of plastic, and whether or not they'll pay or how much for it, who knows? But certainly some optimism there that could help change things with the plastic market. So we don't know, and like I said, we don't know if the Rumpke facility opens up, but are they going to be willing to pay us for materials that we're currently paying for, or take those at no cost to us? So, you can't predict those things, and we don't know.
So as far as next steps after this meeting, do both groups, the CAC and the executive group, meet separately, and then we'll meet again? Is there a meeting schedule? I'm just not sure yet. I'm not on the list yet.
Not yet.
Rondi, the CAC does have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday, correct?
Yeah, yes.
I advertised that, so.
Thank you.
So yeah, morning, I guess. The CAC generally meets the third Thursday of the month at 5:15. And if I remember right, historically we've done every other month, but for 2021, the CAC decided to do every month and cut back if that seemed to be too much. But I think with the solid waste management plan, monthly will probably work. So
people are leaving very quickly right now, and I just wanted to reach out. I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, but it wasn't part of the agenda. One of the things I think would be helpful for us to have is a way to have a group document that everybody could contribute to on Google Docs. And I don't know what people think about that. It would be like the notes that we were taking tonight, organized with the bullet points that we're seeing, because those are the components of the plan that need to be addressed. But would that be, do you think that would be helpful to you?
I'm wondering if something like a Trello, like how would I describe that? Like a platform for group collaboration would be more effective, so that things are delegated or easier to see instead of all info on one sheet. I'm not sure if other people have thoughts about that. I don't use Google. I don't have a Google account, so it's hard for me often to collaborate with that, because you generally need to have an account.
And I could just see other people saying, "Oh, I just can't deal with yet another."
I know, another
program.
account.
So
yeah,
I would offer. I mean, I guess I would be happy to maintain a document in that Dropbox folder, and if people want to email me contributions, I will update and revise that document as I get input from people.
I'll also note that Dropbox has a service called Dropbox and Paper, I think it is, or Dropbox Paper. I haven't investigated it yet, but it's described as a collaborative workspace for bringing creation and collaboration together.
Interesting. Dropbox Paper?
Exactly.
I'll look at that. So,
Since we all have access to that already, that might make it also
might-
possible to avoid another service, like you mentioned.
good idea. And I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Google Docs because I've been challenged by it a couple times. In any case, let's have, maybe we'll have some more information by the CAC meeting about this.
I guess, and before we all, I guess, adjourn, even though most of us have left, I would real quick go back. There seemed to be some consensus about doing a joint committee amongst the staff of Board CAC to help identify the waste problems
Mhm.
that we see. How did we want to go about assigning that committee?
Oh, I think we have to take volunteers.
So,
Or we line up people and lasso them. I don't know.
We can, at our CAC meeting, I can see who's interested.
okay.
Good.
Okay.
And it was Isabel's good idea to have that committee, so we already know the board member.
I'll let her know you nominated her.
I'm just thinking, if I take on one more thing, that's not going to be good. So, but I think it was a good discussion tonight. I'm really glad that we had this, and I know how important the CAC is going to be in this.
So, yeah.
Well, I think we're excited to have a project.
Good, good. And I'm excited about tires already.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I mean, I want to get going on it now. Tom, call him tomorrow, would you? Find out what they're all about. So, okay, well, if nobody else has any other good ideas for the moment, let's call this to an end, and you all will have a meeting, what, next
Thursday.
Next Thursday? Okay, good. So, well, I've only occasionally been to a CAC meeting, I think 2 or 3, but we will hear from Tom about what was accomplished, and I thank you all for your time. You're the steadfast ones. You're the ones left at the end of the meeting. So thank you all, and we are adjourned for now.